Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the FPL Wire. This is Lateriser 12. Sorry, I couldn't do the morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever Zofar does. But I have my co-host Pras with me as well. How's it going, Pras? How are you getting into preseason mode, and how's that treating you?
Going very well. Saka has just scored, so we're getting into that phase of the planning where whenever a guy scores in preseason, he enters your thoughts. I mean, Saka was already in our thoughts, but it's that time and really loving it.
It actually might be an interesting practice to see how preseason results are actually affecting percentage ownership for players. Like, we should actually check the ownership for Saka today and tomorrow and see how much difference actually happens between the two.
Definitely. I mean, he's already 50% owned, but I think it'll only go higher.
Right. And with us, we have a very special guest today. This is the Promoted Teams pod. As you guys know it, it's always the curtain raiser, the kickoff for us when we're really getting into preseason mode. And unfortunately, this time we don't have FPL Irons, who most of you know as Luke, joining us, who's been hosting the Promoted pod for us every season. But he's replaced by a very, very, very able replacement, recommended by Luke himself. And not just that, he is the host of the official EFL Fantasy Podcast, which is the official Gaffr podcast. I have with me Dan Luke Ashby, who also happens to be a fan of Luton. Congratulations, first of all, Dan, and how's it going?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Great to be with you. I'm looking forward, not just talking about Luton, but also about Burnley and Sheffield United in this podcast. I know it's big shoes to fill covering for Irons, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, I'm just going to dive right into it and first ask the question which everybody really wants to ask. Is the stadium going to be ready?
Yeah, apparently so. From what I've heard, it's ahead of schedule. So fingers crossed that they had to spend about 12 million just to get it up to Premier League standard. But yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be ready in time.
This time last year, were you expecting this?
To be promoted.
Yes.
Realistically, we have we had a bottom six championship budget. The year before last, we did finish in the playoffs in sixth. To be honest, I thought we would finish between 10th and sixth, but we sort of kept the majority of the squad together, and we were able to push on and yeah, get promoted, which is ridiculous, really, when you consider less than 10 years ago we were playing non-league. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Lovely. We're going to dive right into all the three promoted teams. But before that, just a very, very quick sponsors plug. I mean, Fantasy Football Scout have been supporting us since 4 years. Both Pras and I have been using it ever since we've known how to play FPL. And all the stats that you see on the podcast, all the tools, etc., they're all from Fantasy Football Scout. It is the best time to become a member because that Gameweek 1 team is so important. And to become a member, they have an excellent 30% discount going on at the moment. You just got to click on the link in the description below. Right. Pras, what do you want to talk about first? What are your questions that you want to ask Dan?
Well, let's go from the top, right? Let's talk about last season and look at all the teams, and of course, we will zoom into the three that got promoted. But I mean, in terms of last season, Dan, what was your view? We've got on the table the top 9 teams, and it's 9 is an odd number, but even West Brom, I mean, I think if you look at expected data, they did really well. So just talk us through, how last season was, how the team sort of shaped up, who made the last inroads into the final playoff positions versus who sort of slipped away. Just your general thoughts on the season.
So it was a bit of a weird one because you obviously had Norwich, Burnley, and Watford coming down, and going into the first game of the season, everyone expected definitely Norwich and Watford to be up there. A lot of people thought Burnley would struggle because they got rid of a lot of players, and they brought in Vincent Company, which, although he's well known within the English game, he's not known within the Championship. He done okay in Belgium, but it wasn't like he didn't really stand out. And the players he recruited was a lot of young players, a lot on loan, and he used his Belgian knowledge to sign some players from Belgium, which to be honest, I didn't know anything about, and a lot of other Championship people didn't know a lot about. But it was clear from the first game, because they were the Friday night game against Huddersfield, and I think we've all grown accustomed to Burnley being 4-4-2 long ball, Dyche ball basically, and that was not what we saw the first game of the season. They were heavy possession. They had Josh Cullen, who they signed from a Belgian team, but grew up in the West Ham academy, and he basically played DM and was basically dictated the play, and they passed Huddersfield off the park. They won 1-0, but it could have been 3 or 4, and that was the first moment where you sort of stood up and took notice of them. The next couple of months they sort of struggled because they were obviously becoming accustomed to the way Company wanted to play. So they were making silly mistakes from passing out from the back, and they would let in sloppy goals. But then it got to about definitely after the World Cup break, probably before, and they just kept on winning games, and they were hammering teams, to be honest. So they're one of the best sides the Championship seen in a long, long time.
How do you think? I mean, while we're just talking about Burnley, I think it just makes sense to dive deeper into them. How do you think they're going to adapt
Yeah.
to the Premier League?
I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be mid-table. I think it'll be interesting because they had a few players on loan. Ian Madsen, the left back, who's currently at Chelsea. As you can see on this screenshot, I'm unsure who's going to play there at the minute. Goalkeeper's another position. They had Muric, but Trafford's been heavily linked. England under 21 goal. He had a great World Cup. Euros, and he was on loan at Bolton for 18 months. But it's been heavily rumoured that Burnley have basically signed him for 15 million. So he'll suit the way they play. Another player that they're desperately trying to get back is Nathan Tella, who was their top goal scorer with 17 goals from sort of right wing, 22 attacking returns. And
I mean, would they get him though? I mean, Tella's now Southampton, right? So Southampton want to keep him as how well he did in the Championship.
Yeah, that's the problem they're having, and Southampton are holding out for like 15, 20 million. So it's all going to be about, will Burnley stump up the price? But he was essential because what they were doing was towards the end of the season, Ashley Barnes was playing as the 9, and he was dropping in and linking, and Taylor was very clever with his runs to get in behind, and a lot of teams struggled to cope with his pace. Interestingly, Ashley Barnes is not there this year. He's gone to Norwich, and there's big question marks about who will play up front. They still got Weghorst. They
Whose
got
dad
Jay
is here, by the way.
Rodriguez.
I saw that today.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that today.
Yeah.
Foster and Obafemi, like they've got numbers, but it like I haven't got a clue who's going to start, and I'm not sure many Burnley fans do either. I don't know if there's specific players you want me to talk about.
Let's talk formation first. Let's talk formation first, because everyone
Yeah.
looks at this Burnley formation and looks at Man City, right? They think, okay, it's a 4-3-3 setup. It's the Pep way, or even the Arteta way. It's basically the same
Yeah.
school. And is it true? I mean, watching them last year, are we saying, the back four was playing out the back the same way? You had basically Brownhill and I think Good Johnson or somebody else who was Goodmanson, who was playing the KDB and Gundogan role. Are they wingers just like, they hold the width, or is it too lazy to sort of think of them as, the next or the mini Man City?
No, it's very similar to that. What was interesting at the start of the season, they would play Cullen and Jack Court defensively with surprisingly Brownhill a lot of the time in the 10. But similar to Man City last year when Pep started to adapt to, the three with Walker or Stones moving in, Burnley did as well. And what that enabled was Cullen would sort of drop back into the three, and Maddison would just fly up the left wing, which is why it's a bit disappointing they haven't got Maddison at the minute, because he was ideal. He very attacking wing backs. As you mentioned, they did become more brave as the season went on and went more to 2/8s, which was Brownhill, which was why there was a lot of hope in the FPL community that they would price him at 4.5, but he just had such a good season that they priced him higher. And you're right,
FPL
they
were
did
like,
play
we've given you too many gifts this
Goodmanson
season,
as well.
not another.
Because people associate Brownhill with that 4.5 gem 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah. And the wingers are really interesting. They sort of rotated a lot. Taylor played the majority, but they had Zahuri and Benson, which when the prices were released, I was very intrigued because they gave Benson 5.5, and I don't know how much of Burnley you watched, but he scored a lot of goals, but they were basically, you know how Iron Robin would cut in and was able to curl them? That's Benson done that. I'm not joking, about 3 or 4 games in a row at the end of the season, exactly the same finish. And I think that's why he got bumped to the 5.5. But I think if you spoke to anyone who watched the championship or especially played Gaffr, Zahuri is probably the better pick at 5 million. So that's the tip I would say. I would go for Zahuri. Obviously, I'd go for Teller if they signed him, but I would go Zahuri over Benson.
Is he nailed?
If they signed Teller, sorry, Brandon.
Is he nailed on that side?
Sorry, was that?
Is he nailed on for that side? Does he have competition in the squad, or do you expect him to get majority of the minutes?
Yeah, it's hard to judge. Like I said, they sort of had 3 wingers, Teller, Benson, and Zahuri, and they would sort of rotate. So it's hard to really judge at the minute. But if you were comparing Zahuri and Benson without Teller, I would go for Zahuri at 5 million.
So in fact, that was going to be my question as well. If Teller signs, then who does he replace? It sounds like Benson more than Zahuri, and so that makes him a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, just looking at data, which of course, we can't help ourselves from last season. I think from Burnley, he was the highest XG creator in terms of his output, even more than Ashley Barnes. And maybe that was because Ashley Barnes didn't play the first half of the season and he only became nailed in the second half of something like that. But you'd think if Teller signs, let's say they sign a striker or it's a nailed striker, whether that's Weghorst or not, Do you think out of them, a slice of Burnley attack, who is it to go for? The striker or one of the wingers, or like Zahuri you said?
So look, if they sign Teller, I would go to Teller, but I think they would price Teller at 5.5 because of his output. And we sort of seen with, I know it's a striker position, uh, Morris and NDI are 5.5, and I think he would get priced at that price. Um, yeah, that striker position is really annoying because they have options, but it's so up in the air. Like at the real start of the season, Jay Rodriguez was first choice, but he had like injury problems towards the end, and like I said, Barnes was the main man. But like he's gone, so it's definitely not Barnes. And we saw glimpses of Obafemi and Foster, but they were mainly as subs off the bench. So I'm not sure if company will go straight with them.
Uh,
If you're thinking who's the most like Ashley Barnes, it's probably is Veghorst, but I'm
Right.
not sure if they keep him.
are they linked to anybody in the market? Is there anybody who's constantly linked with Burnley at the moment?
No, I've not seen a striker. Like I said, they've mainly been linked with Nathan Teller. Um, so yeah, I've not seen anything.
Right. Now, I actually wanted to talk about, you spoke about Benson's finishes. And there's a lot of conversation about Burnley scoring and overperforming on their expected data uh, last season. And, coming into the Premier League, defenses are going to be tighter. It's the goalkeepers are going to have a higher skill set. How much of that is going to come into play, you reckon, or you reckon they'll still finish maybe in the upper half of the lower table, lower half of the top half? You still reckon that happens, or this conversation about overperforming their
Yeah,
expected
yeah,
data?
yeah. Yeah, I think from what I saw last year, the Premier League, and you guys saw more than I did. It wasn't a good bottom half of the table last year. For the three promoted sides to stay up, I think it was clear it wasn't a good bottom half. And Burnley have a way of playing which I think suits them, suits the players, suits company, and I think I personally think they'll be about 15th to 10th.
All right, cool. And in terms of defense, they primarily did well in defense and got the number of clean sheets that they did because they hawk so much of the possession. Now, I tend to get an inkling when a team that's used to dominate so much possession in the championship is sort of brave. Uh, are they going to have a slightly more pragmatic approach once they reach the Premier League, or is company a purist in your opinion? And if that's the case, I do expect a few hammerings. I expect Burnley to have some games where they're scoring 3, 4, 5 goals. What are your thoughts there?
I would probably agree with you. I think he has a set way, and I think he will play that way, company. But it was really interesting when they they played against Luton away, and Luton we'll get onto them a bit, but Luton are more direct, similar to what Burnley were, and company did make subtle changes to cope with Luton's style. So I'm guessing he would make subtle changes uh, to if he played a top side. But we did see him in the FA Cup. They did play Man City. I think they played Man United as well. I think maybe in the League Cup, and they played their way of playing. Um, I think when they play against the teams who you think they should compete with in the table, I think they'll be more than a match, and they'll pick up a lot of points from those sort of teams.
Got it. I mean, Bayer is 4.0 million as well. So is that an 4.0 million defender worth looking at when you're comparing to the other 4.0 defenders as well?
Yeah. So Bayer, although he didn't play a lot of games, I think he missed the first month or so from transfer window. But when he was fit, he normally played. They've not signed anyone who I think would replace him. So for a 4 million defender, who's going to probably be last on our bench, we just want someone who plays, right? And I think Bayer is definitely one of the options, probably top of the 4.0s. I would go with at the minute.
Right, because the only other option that people are talking about is Bell, if I'm not mistaken. So, straight off the bat, if you had to pick between the two, who would you go for?
Sorry, you cut out then.
The only other one that FPL managers are looking at the moment is Bell. So between Bayer and Bell, who would you prefer?
Yeah. Maybe Bayer, but there's not much in them. They're both going to play similar. They're both going to play in defense and don't really have an attacking threat really. So yeah, I think Bell's been quite popular because he was the first one. And if you're worrying about price drops, then I think maybe Bayer might be the safer pick.
We heard it here. Bayer is completely nailed, as mentioned by Dan. So there we go. We have our first nailed 4.0 defender confirmed. So I just want to inquire a little bit more about the XG conceded bit, because they were the highest or the best XG conceded team in the league. Obviously, partly due to possession. This may change, but in one sentence, do you think that data is because of the high possession, or is that just that they're a very, very good defense in terms of how they are? Basically, are they the solid defensive team, or is it a Man City type good XG conceded, which can change in the Premier League?
Yeah,
the latter.
I think it's more the fact that they were just so good with possession, then that they just very rarely gave up a lot of chances, or like I said, a lot of them were mainly down to themselves by giving the ball away in silly positions and things like that. So if you're looking, I would probably say Luton and Sheffield United are actually better defensive sides than what Burnley are, but because of the game state and how they play, Burnley were able to get less XG and less chances.
And last one on Burnley from me: are they or is Company a type of manager that sees out games if they're ahead, sit back, or does he just continue to play the way he plays? And the Pep school of learning.
I think towards the end he became a lot more pragmatic. He is a defender at heart, so what we sometimes saw was maybe one of the wingers come off and they have a player called Vitinho, who's normally a fullback, would sometimes play, come on at wing, and obviously in centre mid they can maybe bring on a Jack Court for one of those eights. So he likes to play football, but we know Vincent Kompany is a winner, and he'll do anything to win, basically.
Okay.
Got it.
So some pragmatism.
Yeah, that's the thing I was worried. Just was curious about, because they're not Leeds United crazy, right? So they've got a little bit of practicality amongst them. And Dan right at the top said that they're one of the best teams to come out of the championship in the last few years. So I think you start looking at their options. If you're looking at bottom price attackers or defenders, it's something worth considering. Just one question before we move on to the next team. Heard a lot of people rave about Cullen. How good is he?
Yeah, he's a good player. He's not going to be an option in fantasy, but he's very good at dictating the play. He'll keep it going. But yeah, he doesn't really get goal scoring chances or anything like that. He is just the main man that keeps this Burnley side ticking, and Company's main man. So yeah, he's nailed, but he's not an option at all.
Yeah, I wasn't asking from an FPL point of view at all, but do you think he's proper Premier League quality? What I've heard is that big teams are going to start knocking for him in a year or two? I've heard he's that good.
Yeah, I think we could see that. Anyone who can play in a DM role with his back to well to receive the ball anyway is someone who's going to be an option for those top 6 or 7 clubs, or the big clubs as they're known.
Right. Anything to add at all on Burnley before we move to Sheffield United?
Your
Dan?
top 3 picks. We're gonna have you tell us your top 3 picks. So forget about price. Who do you think scored the most points this year in FPL from Burnley?
It's tricky. Out of the players that are currently there, I would say I think Brownhill will be up there. I think he takes some set pieces, so he'll get the odd assist. From then, it's really tricky because we don't really know the attacking player. I would say Zahuri will, and I'm going to say probably Roberts, just because I think he'll play a lot of games and get the appearance points. But like I say, if someone like a Teller comes in or an Ian Madsen, then those change very quickly.
Right. Great. We move on to Sheffield United next, and the team that finished second. Hearing lots about their fairly similar to how they were the last time they got promoted. Your thoughts on the Blades, Dan?
Yeah, so I would agree with what you've heard. When they initially got relegated 2 seasons ago, they got Inya Kanovic, who had previously been at Fulham and who was renowned for playing 4-3-3, but obviously coming off the back of a Wilder side, they didn't have those players, so they were playing players out of position, and it just didn't work. So he went 2 or 3 months into that season, and they brought back Heckingbottom, who, if you remember, was sort of caretaker manager after Wilder left in the Premier League. A lot of fans weren't overly impressed with that, Sheffield United wise. But what he did do was he just went back to basics. He went back to similar to how Wilder would play, as you've got on the screen there, the 3-5-2, and look, they're very good pros, especially at championship level. They're an experienced side with a little bit of magic added in over the last couple of seasons. So yeah, I'm really on the fence with Sheffield United, just because in the background that they're sort of in the process of being taken over, but it hasn't progressed. So I think it's limiting what they can do in the transfer market with their ability to sign players, because you look at this side and you'll be familiar with a lot of the key players in this. They haven't evolved apart from NDI up front and Omehodovic. A lot of the players are the same,
Say
but
that
they're
again, Dan.
2-3 years old. Sorry?
Who was that defender you talked about?
Omehodovic.
Okay.
The right wing,
there's a question
right
on
centre back. Yeah,
Never going to attempt that name ever.
yeah, I can believe it.
Go on,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, so yes, yeah, like I said, it's very similar to Sheffield United when when they were last up. And one big question is, have they progressed enough? And now they're like 3 years older. They did have a couple of Man City youngsters on loan, James McAtee and Doyle, who apparently they're trying to get back, but with the rules about the number of loans you can do between Premier League clubs, I think they're struggling to get those over the line. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried for Sheffield United. yeah, I think it could be a hard season for them.
If you just had to straight up, I'll throw you in the deep end, right at the top, predict their position, do you think they go back down again?
I think they'll be bottom 6, and it will really depend on the transfer window and whether they can keep and die. There's rumours he's going, and he's by far their best player. So, like I said, that this before the transfer window closes, a massive few weeks, a month for Sheffield United. But at the minute, I definitely have them bottom 6.
I mean, people are looking at them at the start of the season for enablers because the fixtures in the first four are
Yeah.
not too bad. They've got Palace at home, Forest away, and Everton at home in the first 4 games. Take us through the FPL options. Take us through the attack first.
Yeah, so the attack, you'll all be familiar with McBurney. He had a better season than what he had the last few years since he's been at Sheffield United. But the main man for Sheffield United, especially last year, was Iliman Ndiaye. He's an international with Senegal, so you might have seen he was briefly in some of the World Cup games, and he's very raw, but he's got a very high ceiling, and he basically carried them at times to second place. He's a very good dribbler of the ball. He can take 2 or 3 players on, can get them up the pitch, and look, his attacking returns was 24 attacking returns. He got 14 goals, 10 assists. So he's not just a scorer; he's very creative. So I know I've sort of put him in a front 2, but at times against the bigger teams, I think they'll maybe have McBurney up front, and if Ndiaye will stay, he'll sort of play as 110, and maybe Berger will be another 10 in behind. But yeah, I can see why seeing Ndiaye in some drafts. He's a good enabler, and at 5.5 with the fixtures, he's someone of interest to me. Berger's an interesting one, and it's very dependent on what position he plays, because I think we saw, especially the Premier League, will be familiar with him more deeper. But in the Championship, he done a lot of his best work when he was a bit more further forward. He's very good at carrying the ball, and he linked up well with NDI at times. So like I'm not sure I would go there, but he wouldn't be the worst option. But the
If
main
if the
sorry,
Man City guys come in, if they are loaned back, they were playing in the 2. So then they would play instead of Berg, right? Or would he play anywhere? Norwood would miss out.
no, but no, Berger was playing it. Towards the end of the season, what happened was Norwood actually dropped out,
Yeah.
and Doyle was playing with Berger in midfield, and they had James McAtee behind the front 2. But like I say, I can't see them getting both of them back unless they signed one on permanently, which I'm just not sure Sheffield United are in the position to do that. So you could argue that it's a very much a wait and see for Sheffield United. But the real interesting player in this is Ahmed Hodvic, which plays right centre back, and I think they were renowned for the overlapping centre backs when Wilder was there, and they don't really do it on the left side, but Ahmed Hodvic would do it, and he got some very good attacking returns, and they didn't all come from set piece opportunities. He would just randomly turn up in the box and be in shooting positions. So Ahmed Hodvic
Yeah. 6 goals and 2 assists.
Trying to work it. 8 attacking returns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you
so,
say he's a little
yeah,
bit like a Rudiger sort of character who likes to just freestyle his way inside the box, etc., and likes to take a pop? Is he sort of similar to him?
No, he's more. What you'll see is they'll try and do. They'll outnumber. They might not be easy in the Premier League, but what they would try and do is get 3-on-2s further forwards, and what would happen is he would be the extra man for the run, so he would then be getting to shooting positions through that way. But he is also very good at set pieces. Like there'll be numerous times where you're watching him and he'll have like 3 or 4 chances in a game. And yeah, I know there's a lot of good value at 4.5, but I think if you're looking for a bench option in some weeks and also an option with a higher ceiling, then Armin Hodvic could be a really good under the radar pick.
What do you think about the wing backs? Because on paper they should be more attacking, especially in a 3-5-2 setup that you mentioned. Any of them interesting?
Yeah, it's really weird because a lot of people seem to like Bulldog as their 4.0 million, and for me he's a rotation risk. He'll probably start the season, but Bogle, I think, with his attributes, will actually suit Premier League level. He's pace and power. So I wonder if after a while Bogle would become the number one there. He had a mixed season last year. It started injured and then he got in the side and he lost form and things like that. So, but if you're asking for someone who I think is a good attacking wing back, then it's Bogle. But he's not nailed, and for me, neither is Bulldog.
Here's the question. There's a hidden gem from some research that we've done. Norrington Davis. He's 4.0, and some people seem to think that if he returns back to fitness, he will make the left wing back position his own after, I think Lowe was deputizing for him. You know more about that? Is that something, he's also 4.0 million?
Yeah, it's really the left side is a bit up in the air. It's not their strongest side. Like they have Robinson, who's played a lot of the minutes at left-sided centre back. But you've then got Norrington Davis, which you mentioned, who can play left-sided centre back, but can play left wing back. But he had a lot of injuries, so like I can't guarantee he's gonna definitely play in a certain position. It's gonna be one of them. Let's see what happens maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the start of the season and see if we can get an inkling. Because you're right, if he's playing left wing back, then he could be a really good option.
Right. Maybe one to watch. But yeah, that was one that stood out.
And what about McBurney? I mean, I do remember that, last time around Sheffield United spent a decent amount of money both on Berger as well as McBurney. He wasn't quite up to the mark in the Premier League last time he was around. Has he progressed, improved as a player?
Yeah, so because obviously they were in the Championship 2 years. The first season he was in and out. He struggled massively, but last year he got 15 attacking returns. So I think at times he could be an option, but for me, if I'm going a striker for Sheffield United, it's NDI every day of the week. I'm finding that 0.5 million for NDI.
All right. Cheers. And what about teams targeting Sheffield United? I mean, if we have our Haalands and Salahs and our attackers playing against Sheffield United, how good of an attacking fixture is that in your opinion?
Yeah, so like I mentioned when we were talking about Burnley, I think Sheffield United will be fairly good defensively. So I think they might struggle to score goals. But let's be honest, the top players in this league will score goals against probably all of these promoted sides. But if you're looking maybe like a mid-table side, I think Sheffield United are more likely to keep clean sheets than say score 2 or 3 goals.
That's
Got
key.
it.
That's key. I mean, just the attitude of these teams is so important to know early on. So they're more likely to sit back, take the pressure, as opposed to Burnley, who like to pass out. And so I think that differentiation is key.
Yeah, slightly tighter
Yeah.
games when
Also,
it comes. Go on, Dan.
yeah. Also, one thing to notice about Sheffield United is they were very good on the counter attack, especially when from set pieces they scored numerous goals from their ability to counter. One of the reasons was NDI. The other one was McAtee, which unfortunately they don't have at the minute. So yeah, they could be quite good at counter attacking side if they get the right players in.
We didn't talk about set pieces actually. Who takes penalties for Sheffield United as well as Burnley?
Burnley, they only had 3 last year. Rodriguez took 2 of them, and Ashley Barnes took the other one. So my guess is it would be Rodriguez, but
We don't
there's
know.
no guaranteed starter. Yeah.
Greg,
Sheffield United, Sheffield United had 2 and they missed both of them. So I think it would probably be like Norwood or someone like that. It definitely wasn't NDI last year because he would have taken one if he had the chance. So um yeah, sorry. Anyone who's hoping to get their pen player, I'm not sure I can offer much insight, especially for those 2.
Same question then. Your top 3 point scorers, and I mean, assume NDI stays. Who would you think are the best 3?
Yeah, so I would say NDI, Armin Hodvic, and probably Berger if he plays in attacking role, I think.
Much as Burger. He's 5.0. Worth keeping an eye on. Right.
Yeah, it's all about position with him. If they end up playing DM, then he won't get it.
Got it. Got it. Interesting that you haven't, spoken about either of the keepers as options just yet. Let's then come to your team, Dan. Tell us about your club. Tell us if there are options. Tell us how you feel. Are you optimistic? Are you thinking you're going to go back down again? What's the story?
Yeah. So I don't know how much of Luton you saw, or maybe you didn't watch anything, all the playoffs or anything. We're very direct side, and we will go long ball, but not always like head height or something like that. Both of our strikers, Morris and Adebayo, are 6 foot. We can play into them, whether that's chest, feet, head. We will press, so not like a crazy full press like Leeds or anything like that, but we will be proactive in pressing because we were very good at turning the ball over in certain areas of the play. Wing backs are key for us. Doughty, and last year it was Cody Drame, but in the second half, and James Bree in the first. At present, it looks like neither are going to be coming back to Luton, so that's a bit of a shame. But the biggest chance we will have of staying in the division is our stadium. It's different to any stadium in the Premier League, and the atmosphere that can be created is very hostile for these players. It's not a nice stadium to go to visually, and it's very tight, and the supporters can touch you if they want to. They can scream in your face and things like that. So yeah, look, if we're going to stay up, home form is going to be massive, like we've seen in recent years with Brentford and Forest. But that's why this upgrade has to happen, because it's our only chance of staying up, really.
It's interesting because Luton away might just be a tricky tie. It's something that's already registered in my head now because of you. So that is quite interesting. And I mean, it's sort of like, can they do it on a cold, windy night in Luton? It's probably going to be the new Stoke.
Yeah, the Stoke thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So what do you think, though, Dan? Let's give me your opinion as a fan. You think you guys are going to stay in the league?
Yeah. So first thing to notice is the club is fan owned, so it's not got a billionaire or a massive millionaire in charge. So a lot of our recruitment is data driven. Obviously not to the levels of Brentford and Brighton, but that's sort of the mold we will be trying to become. And like I said, a lot has been made about this massive fortune, but 12, 13 million is having to go up on upgrading our stadium. We are in the process of starting to build our new stadium, so some of that money is going to that, and then we will spend some money, but you're not going to see 10, 15 million from our club. It's not going to happen. It's going to be a lot of probably good championship players with the potential to be Premier League players. A lot of them will have key attributes, like they'll be fast or athletic or 6'4" or something like that. So yeah, like to the outsiders, it will look like, oh my God, who are these players you're signing? But that's been like it in the championship. We were signing players that weren't even championship players. Look, I'm under no illusion. It's going to be tough, right? But I think we have like the ground, we have certain factors which I think other teams will struggle against. Style of play will be one of them. Like, we will throw the ball into your area from long throws. And can you deal with that with our two centre backs or three centre backs and our two strikers? So, like, a lot of these Premier League clubs aren't going to be used to our style of play.
Definitely not. I mean, that sort of concept is getting more and more alien, especially in the modern era of the Premier League. Like, we used to have the Stokes and the Burnleys, and we don't really have, and that always used to be a challenge for Premier League clubs. It isn't the case. We don't have that style of a club in the league anymore.
Like, it's not as direct as that. Like us, like we will try and play out from the back, but it's not essential that we have the ball. We're used to not having the ball. Even in the championship, we didn't have the ball. So that's why I think defensively we could do okay. Maybe not against the top lots. Let's be honest. We might struggle against the real top lot. But yeah, I'm just excited. Look, we're under no pressure, right? Everyone's saying we're going down. So if we stay up, we shock the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, having this chat with you and already thinking about the three teams, I've already had a little bit of an affinity and a soft corner for your club already. Like, it's just got that bit of personality and character, and I'm excited to watch, especially the home games, for a lot. So, I mean, and even the names, right? Pras, like, it's sort of like a nostalgia trip for famous FPL picks. You're talking about Doughty, talking about Adebayor. It's just picks and names that you like. Vibes are strong with this club. But take us through the FPL options, Dan.
Yeah. So the two main ones, well, probably three are Morris, 5.5 striker. one of the top goal scorers in the division last year. He got 20 goals, 7 assists, something like that. Yeah, he was, up until a few weeks ago, our record transfer signing, 1.3 million. So he's a main man. We tied him down to a longer term contract. So yeah, he's going to be a handful. He's right. He can shoot right foot, left foot, good in the air. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how he does in the Premier League. The second one's probably Alfie Doughty, left wing back. Very attacking left wing back. On some set pieces, so corners, as being left footed, he'll be on some corners, some free kicks. His attacking returns are probably a bit less than what he would have got. He had started the season out for like 2-3 months. I think he got 2 goals, 5 assists. So he's definitely a decent option at 4.5. Like I've mentioned, there's loads at 4.5. And the third one's probably Bell, who's a left centre back at 4 million. He can play left wing back at times, but that will only be if Doughty isn't fit. He will drive forward from this position, but he only got 1 goal, 1 assist. He won't go up for corners or anything like that. He stays back. So he's likely to play, but he's probably got no goal threat. Although he did score for Jamaica the other day in the Gold Cup.
Of course he did. The bandwagon has started.
Yeah.
2 questions, Dan, from me. One, you've lost Nakamba. Is there a chance of getting him back, and what's the implications of that? And let me ask my second one, then maybe you can answer both. The second one is Adebayo. I mean, you didn't mention him as an option. Apart from the name being unique, of course, he's also 5 million. So if you're looking at FPL price points, I think if somebody is going cheap upfront, maybe even a 4-5-1, people will try to squeeze a 0.5 and get a starting striker. So I suspect Adebayo will be very popular. So if you can talk us through him as well, and him being an option.
Yeah, so I'll start with Nakamba. Massive player for us. Not an FPL option, although he is 4.5, and if we do re-sign him, he will be guaranteed to play. From what I gather, we're trying to sign him, but like his wages we can't afford. So unless Villa are happy to do a deal, he really kicks up a fuss. I don't think he's going to play at Villa, but it's just one of them. Can we get the deal over the line? And he was massive, not as an attacking return, but just someone who would shield the defense and make us even more solid. We're not going to have the ball a lot this year, so we need someone who can win the ball, right? And that's one thing Nakamba is good at. So, yeah, I really hope we sign him back. Adebayo is a really interesting one. We signed him 2-3 years ago from Walsall, who are in League Two, and he's still very raw and he's very unpredictable. The season before last, he was our top goal scorer, got 15 goals in the Championship. And I think what happened was a lot of teams focused on him because they thought he would be the main man. So it enabled Morris to get more space. But also, if you pull up the data, I'm not sure if you're able to do that. Morris and Adebayo actually had very similar XG.
They did.
And it's just Morris, as I mentioned, is a better finisher, right foot, left foot in the air, whereas Adebayo's maybe not as good a finisher. But I think at 5 million playing, and if he is guaranteed, which at the minute I think he will start, I think he's probably the best 5 million striker.
Yeah, I mean, he's the only one that looks nailed to me. And you wouldn't mind
Yeah.
relying on a 5 million striker that's nailed coming on anytime, especially on a team that's dependent on direct football or is, looking at that as an outlet. Plus, that does sound interesting to me.
Exactly. That's why because looking at the data which you have up and
Mm.
for the listeners, I mean, basically you have Carlton Morris at 15.7 XG last year. Adebayor was 14.8. So not too much in it. Who takes pens, by the way, Dan?
Wow, you're opening up a can of worms
Oh,
here.
okay.
So basically,
I'm interested in knowing this too.
had Adebayo had 2 penalties. We had 4 penalties in total last year. Adebayo had one in the league, one in the FA Cup. He scored and missed one. We have Corley Woodrow, who's normally a sub player, but he is a very good penalty taker. If you look at his career, I think he scored like 16 out of 19 or something. So when he started the game with Woodrow and Morris, Woodrow took the penalty. He missed. And then when we'd already sort of guaranteed the playoff position, Morris was on 19 goals and Adebayo gave Morris the ball to get his 20th goal. So he did score and he got the 20th. Morris then had a penalty in the shootout to get promoted. He scored that. So it's a massive up in the air. So I honestly can't tell you. It's
But
definitely going to be, hopefully we get one in pre-season where Morris and Adebayo are both on the pitch and then we will find out.
But it's useful information that it's definitely one of them. I reckon that's useful information. Like,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're here for Adebayo propaganda. So we're going to say he could be on penalties, 5.0 million, and fairly assured to start. That's all we need.
yeah, his minutes are secure. You
He
reckon?
does have a
Then?
terrible record though, but
We owned Mitrovic last year. We're used to it.
to be honest, he has about a 50% record anyway.
Exactly. But just wanted to get that in terms of minutes. You're not worried about Adebayo's minutes at all.
I don't think so. We did sign Ogbene, who can play up front or right wing, but for me personally, I think Morris and Adebayo will start, and from what I've seen, they will start unless we sign another striker. But I think those two will start the season, whoever we sign at this point.
Cool. And then talking about defensive setup and teams targeting Luton, I'm going to already go with the narrative and say that Luton away is a tough fixture in the league, or a tricky fixture at least. But a team to target with your captains, etc., not a problem in terms of defensive. Or are they also like Sheffield United, more defense first? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so we'll be quite solid defensively to a point. Like I mentioned, that if you're playing a Man City or one of the top lot with, sorry, there's a high chance we will concede a few goals. One thing to point out is we got very good at winning 1-0 last year. So I think sometimes that comes into maybe like the team data where we would go 1-0 up and then we'd be able to control the game out. So I wonder, you might see a few times where we nick a game 1-0 and use all the dark arts under the sun to like time wasting and things like that. So yeah, I'm trying not to be biased, but I think defensively we'll be okay, especially at home, I think.
Right. Then to wrap up with a process question to end every section, your top 3 picks from Luton.
Yeah, so Morris, Doughty, and it's between Adebayo and Bell, but because Bell's a 4.0, I'm going to say him. But I'm going to be having 3 players. So
Lovely. That's great to know. That's how you should be playing the game. It's probably why I'm also having these colors when
Yeah.
on the promoted team pod. Definitely growing a fondness for this team. But just before we wrap up, Dan, if there was a chance for a 4.5 million striker to show up or a 4.5 million midfielder to show up from these teams, is there anybody we should keep an eye out for during preseason? Because right now, the community doesn't have a 4.5 million striker or midfielder. Anybody we should watch out for during the preseason?
So as I mentioned, if Nakamba signs for Luton, he's only going to get 2-3 points if he does play, but he'll be a starting player. Up front for Luton, they have a player called Cooley Woodrow. He won't start a lot of games, but he's likely to come on most game weeks. I'm not sure about the other teams, to be honest. A lot of the positions are up in the air at the minute, so
I'll quickly read out. Burnley have no 4.5 million striker, and their 4.5 million midfielders are Gay, Cherlinov, and Costello. Any of them? With a hint of starting, I don't reckon.
none of them.
None of them. And then Sheffield United, we're quickly going to read out the names for you. We've got Osula, who's a 4.5 million striker, and Koulibaly with a C, who's a 4.5 million midfielder. None of them.
Yeah, they're both. I don't think so. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, like I said, it's going to sound biased, but they're probably from Luton if there are any options.
We're here for the Luton propaganda.
Yeah, for it. I mean, we've even got orange colors as a template background. It's all worked out that way, Pras. I think that's the team we're supporting as the pod, I reckon. Let's just shake on it.
Yes, indeed.
Hopefully, I agree.
Right, Dan, thank you so much for giving us your precious time. We're excited for your team, as you already know. We wish you the best of luck. Any last words for our listeners, Dan?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to covering the FPL more. I am a Luton correspondent for Planet FPL, and I am going to plug the Gaffr game. I know a lot of your viewers are Premier League fans, and that's great. But the Championship is wild as it is. Most seasons it's going to be unpredictable. The game's already up and running. I'm a co-host with Angus and Jamie on at EFL Fantasy. We've done an initial pod about the pricing of certain players like Jamie Vardy and players like that. So if you want to play another game, please guys join it. It's a great fun. A lot more different chips, and yeah. Hopefully this has helped you guys. I know Iron's done a great job the last few years, and it was an honor to be asked to come on and spread my knowledge.
It has been great. I mean, I was so confident about getting knowledge from you that I decided to not do any research myself. And it's an hour well spent. I think it's going to be the same for our listeners who want an introduction to these teams. I think it adds to the knowledge, and we're here for the football. Pras, any last words?
Absolutely. I just wanted to thank you, Dan, as well. And I think, at the heart of it, we're all football fans. We're all curious about these teams who we know little about. So getting this, A, is great from that perspective, and B, the FPL lens is great as well. So thank you very much. Before the seasons, when I wasn't on this pod, it used to be one of my favorite ones. So I'm sure it'll help everyone who's listening to this. So thanks again.
Yes, and for the listeners, you can find Dan on Twitter at the rate Dan Luke Ashby. What we're also going to do is, Dan, just send me all the links for the game, for your podcast, your Twitter as well. We'll tweet it up. We'll get the boys to retweet it as well. So we'll get the word out.
Great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
And it's great for having me on as well.
Yes. And if you guys are wanting more FPL content, a couple of days ago, I spoke about Soberslide and Cuckoo. If you haven't seen that video, it's a short 20-minute video. Do check that out. And Pras, you're doing a video telling us about wildcard windows, which is coming in the next few days, is it?
Correct. That'll be the next short video that we do on wildcard windows. Just thoughts on what are the potential options that we have in front of us. So look out for that.
Yeah. And there's going to be lots of more unexpected content. The quantity of content coming out from the wire is going to wrap up. So make sure you're clicking on the like button, subscribe button. Make sure you're getting the word out as well. And we'll see you soon. Take care, guys.
Bye.